As you can see, this table is lined with fine, high-quality veneer, which we are going to remove all of.
What's up guys, welcome back to another episode of Missflips, and in today's video we are participating in the Ugly Duckling Challenge hosted by Desert DIY, and we are making over this coffee table for a client. So let's get flippin'.
Some of you might be wondering why this is a contender for the Ugly Duckling Challenge. It's super unique and has really good bones, but this fake painted veneer is some of the worst I have ever seen. And in my opinion, it takes away from the entire look and completely devalues it. So I'm gonna attempt my first ever diamond pattern with veneer to cover this entire surface and hopefully give it more of that high-end look that I'm going for. So with any piece, the first step is always cleaning, so I'm removing all of the decorative items like the hardware, the drawers, and then also the little decorative gold bits that go on top. That way I can thoroughly clean each individual item. I had hoped that this was actually higher quality than I thought it was, and that I could just pop off the layer that the faux veneer was painted on, but unfortunately that wasn't a thing, so I had to come up with something else. I decided to take the entire piece apart so that I could clean thoroughly and then paint each piece individually. Doing this work up front definitely saves your future self a ton of work. To make sure that my veneer adheres properly to the surface, I made sure to scuff sand the entire surface and make sure that there was no shine across the entire thing. If you look in the corner here, you can see that I haven't gotten the finish off completely because it reflects a little bit of the light. Definitely a helpful tip when you're looking to clean the entire surface. I started sanding the pieces with my orbital sander, but then I noticed that they came apart, so I started taking them all apart so that I could sand them by hand using a trick that I see all over Instagram and YouTube all the time. They make it look so easy, but it's honestly a little trickier than you'd expect. To make sure that all of the dust was cleaned off the piece, I went in with Strip Well's surface cleaner, which can be used as a liquid sander and a surface cleaner, getting all of that dust off and ready for your next step. If you're interested in checking out their surface cleaner or their paint stripper, make sure to check out the description below for a link to their products and a discount code. Now that the surface is completely prepped, it was time to start getting the angle of my veneer right. I want it to go down like this in kind of like a mountain shape, so we're gonna have to divide it into half and get the veneer cut to match these squares. The first thing I'm gonna do is get a template cut out of this wood here so that I can make a pattern on the veneer. Now that I've marked the outside of the template, I want to make a mark on the halfway point. When cutting with a miter saw, you want to make sure that the edge of your saw is on the outside of the line that you've made. That way you get an exact cut. Now that the template's laid out, I like to create a line that goes from corner to corner. This step isn't necessary, but it makes it so much easier to line up your wood grain. Now that we got that line marked, it's time to line it up with the veneer. Make sure your wood grain is perfectly aligned with that line that you've created, and then cut it with a really sharp X-Acto knife. The one that I was working with was super dull, and let me tell you, it was a pain in the butt. Veneer is very expensive, and each one of these cuts is extremely important because if you don't cut it right or if you mess up, you are wasting a lot of money. So score properly, make sure it goes all the way through, and learn from my mistakes. Once you have one cut out, it is time to go for the other side. So you want to make the same diagonal line, but going across the opposite way. This should make an X pattern across your template. Then you just line up your template the exact same way you did for the other side, and you're good to go. Now that you have both pieces cut out, it's time to match up the sides. You want to pair them to make it look as cohesive as possible. Once you have them lined up, it's important to plane the edges that you are going to pair. That way when they're glued, it is as seamless as possible. For this to be achieved, I'm going to need an extra sharp planer, so I am going to use my Veneer mini sharpener. This mini sharpener is honestly perfect for my workshop because I'm not like a full-on woodworker that needs to sharpen all my tools on a regular basis. So it's an extremely affordable and easy to store option. That way it's not taking up an entire section of my workshop, but still allows me to get my tools sharp when I do need to do that. It also comes with so many accessories and is extremely easy to put together. When sharpening things, sparks fly and particles fling all over the place, so it's important to wear the proper safety gear. This thing was honestly way quieter than I expected it to be, but since this was my first time sharpening something, I didn't really know what to expect, let alone how to use it. But after watching a few tutorials, I eventually figured it out. I still have to learn how to get my angles right, but I did get it a lot sharper than it was before. If you'd like to check out this product, make sure to check out the description below for the link. Now it was finally time to match up the pieces and plane the edges. To ensure a straight edge, you want to sandwich the veneer between two pieces of wood. That way the planer has something to go against and has a straight line to follow. Now that that edge is super smooth, it was time to get everything taped and glued down. It's important to place both horizontal and vertical pieces of tape, that way you're pulling the veneer together while also catching all of the glue. Once everything's taped, place your veneer into like a teepee or an A type of shape, and then spread a nice layer of wood glue in between the seam. To have it dry properly, set it between two pieces of wood and then set something on top of it to make it press together in the center. Now it's time to do it all over again for the other side. Once the glue dries, it's important to sand down the middle of the seam, that way you don't have any glue chunks keeping your veneer from adhering to the surface. To create that bond, I'm using this glue right here and we are painting it on with a paintbrush, and you want to make sure to completely cover both the surface and the bottom of the veneer. Normally, this would be the point in time where I would say, hey, each container of glue has their own set of instructions, so make sure to follow the instruction, blah, blah, blah. And that's exactly what I did. It said not to use clamps. It said that it didn't have to use clamps in order to get this to adhere properly. It did say to wait until the surface was glossy, but I did that. I followed the instructions perfectly and almost put my veneer on backwards. Luckily that didn't happen, but it didn't matter anyway because I did it and it still didn't work. So I had to do it all over again, and all of the glue had to be peeled up and I had to start from scratch. And then I ended up putting clamps on it and it was kind of fine, sort of. I ran into some problems later, but anyways, we'll get to that. I'm showing this to let you know that mistakes do happen. There is a lot of trial and error involved in trying something new, and you're not always going to do it right the first time. And be patient with yourself and love yourself and be open to improvising. For the main surface of the coffee table, I am following the exact same steps, except I am putting the entire diamond together. Since I was having such a hard time with the other veneer anyways, I decided to try the peel and stick veneer. That way I could compare and see which one I liked to work with better. But because it is peel and stick, that means that there are two separate layers that I have to cut through in order to create those seamless center lines. So I opted to do a completely different method for that. I'm still sandwiching them between each board, but I am using my miter saw instead of my planer. And because we are going for a full diamond, I do have to cut the other side that's going to be butting up against the other half. What I didn't think about here is that I should have waited until I had all 4 pieces cut out and then made the cuts to the edges that are going to be up against each other. But, you know, you make do with what you got. And at that point in time, that was where we were at. And it worked out, so. But as far as the peel and stick element goes, my god, was that such a game changer. It stuck so much better than the glue and was so much easier to put on. All I had to do was peel it off, line it up, and stick it on, and it worked amazingly well. I then went over everything with my roller, making sure that all of the air bubbles were out, and it worked very well. So moving forward, I will definitely be using this instead of the standard veneer. Since I didn't cut all 4 pieces at the same time, I did have some trouble lining this piece up right here, and I ended up having to cut the inner edge in order to make this bottom half line up with the piece that was already on it. But it was an easy fix. I just lined it up with a ruler and then cut edges off as needed. One of the downsides with the peel and stick is that I didn't want to glue the inner edges just because I didn't know how that would react with the peel off paper and such. So there was a little bit of a gap in between, and I ended up having to go in with some glue and just sand it down to create kind of like my own wood filler by kicking up some of the dust with the sander and mixing it with the glue. It kind of just filled in those gaps. I definitely used a little too much glue and things got a little messy, but you know, we're just learning as we go and kind of figuring things out, and it all turned out fine in the end. Trust the process. Things most likely will look worse before they look better. When I finally got to the drawer fronts, I was breathing a sigh of relief at how simple and easy this step of the process was. All I had to do was cut off a little piece of veneer to put over this piece, and I luckily was able to use some of the excess from the other pieces that I was using. And then to get that nice clean edge, I went in with a router bit and cleaned off all of the excess veneer. To get rid of some of these pesky edges, I went up with my sandpaper and this just flaked right off. Super easy fix. For this piece, my client originally wanted to go with blue, but something changed her mind and she decided to go with red, so we went with red. Which in hindsight is honestly kind of ironic because I worked so hard to remove so much red from this piece just to, you know, paint it back on. But hey, that's okay. By the way, guys, if you don't know already, I do have a book out on Amazon that is all about how to start your furniture business. It's available on Kindle as well as physical copies, so make sure to head on over there if you are interested in learning the business side of furniture flipping. Once the sides were completely painted, I decided it was time to put the legs back together and attach them to this lower level. Because of the new added layer of veneer, some of the legs didn't go on as easily as the others, so I had to take off chunks of the existing indent. That way the veneer would fit perfectly inside. So unfortunately, I rushed this process a little bit and didn't sand properly, so when I went in to stain, it was very splotchy and uneven, so I ended up staining the entire thing and then having to sand everything back again. So just take it from me, guys, sand properly. Make sure to go from like your usual 120, 180, 200 grits and just take your time. Luckily, the second time around came out very well. And here is the phase of the process where I literally almost broke down and cried. Air bubbles in my veneer. So I had to go in and cut holes into my beautiful veneer. Luckily, I was able to fix everything, which was really nice, but it just, oh god, it was devastating. So I went in with a glue syringe and made sure to spread wood glue all over inside of these bubbles and completely glue it down. And once you get the glue all the way in there, it's a good idea to just kind of rub it around and make sure that you have complete coverage. And yeah, rub it around, get it really nice and flat, make sure those seams are flat, and then clamp everything down and let it sit as long as you possibly can. To clean off the decorative elements, I'm just using Brasso and an SOS pad, and we are just scrubbing them down. Make sure to get some hot water in the mix and you're good to go. Because these guys are a little on the cheaper side and probably not full brass, I wasn't able to get a lot of the blemishing off, so I opted to cover it with gold paint and then covered it with a spray-on polyurethane. Now that all my glue was finally dry, I went in and sanded everything smooth once again, and then stained everything once again. Finally, it's time for the easy part. My client had mentioned to me before I even bought this coffee table that she wanted a diamond pattern on it, so that is the whole entire reason why I went in for this diamond pattern veneer, and then also why I ended up putting a diamond on top of that diamond pattern. When doing a diamond pattern, you want to make sure that all of your corners line up and all of the parallel lines are perfectly straight. Otherwise, it's going to throw off your other triangles and make it look really wonky. So make sure to take your time when lining things up, or, you know, do the normal thing and measure stuff. For the top coat, I am using a clear water-based polyurethane, and I'm just rolling it on here, making sure to get good coverage and taking out any of the chunks of the polyurethane that I see. And this is a coffee table, so I'm putting 6 layers of top coat on the surface just to make sure that it's going to last a really long time. To make sure to get the smoothest finish possible, make sure to sand between each coat. But anyways guys, we are coming to the end of this flip here, and I just want to say a huge thank you to Desert DIY for hosting this Ugly Duckling challenge. Make sure to go check out the other artists participating. I have the link to the playlist in the description below. And if you feel so inclined, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe and do all those things so that we can stay a happy flippin' family. And until next time guys, stay flippin'.